Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, Knit This Mess. I am Angela, a mostly knitter, but general fiber crafter in Houston, Texas. This week, I want to talk to you about warm weather knits and warm weather knitting. There's a difference. I'll talk about the progress I've made this week in both my knitting and my organizing. Talk about what I'm wearing, which will segue into talking about all my cotton and linen yarns, which is a great way to start talking about summer knitting and summer knits. And before we get started, I have been reminded that I need to ask you to, if you are enjoying this content, please like and or subscribe. It's down there somewhere. Okay, so first of all, progress on my knitting this week. I finished the Musselburgh hat that I started with the Blue Moons Socks That Rock, and I washed it yesterday. It's super wash, so I just threw it in the wash on a delicate cycle with a bunch of other stuff, and then I hung it outside on the line by one end, because as you know, it's whoop. So I hung it by one end and it dried, and it's so soft. The yarn, when you knit with it, it was a little bit stiff, made a very crisp fabric, but now that it's washed, it's very soft. As you can see, I'm having a little bit of trouble getting it tucked back in itself. So yes, so I washed it, and it's got, I don't know if you can see, but it's got a lovely soft halo on it. And I can see why this is such a popular hat pattern. And of course, the yarn you choose has something to do with it, but it's so soft and it fits. I made the adult large because I have a big head, and it just fits loosely without binding. I don't like to wear a really tight hat, so it feels wonderful. I can see why it's so popular. And if you have long, if you want it, you can also not fold it, and comes down kind of like a cloche kind of thing, covers your ears and the back of your, I really like it. I really like it. So I'm definitely going to be making more of those this summer. And on the twists and turns, I did finish this side with all the stripes, and I've done most of that wavy strip on the other side. I'm almost done with that, and then I'll do that stripy section. So things are moving right along on the progress. I also started this other project with some yarns I found in my boxes that I forgot I had. I just kind of, with some novelty yarn, I just kind of started playing around with it. I'm not going to talk about that yet because there's no pattern to talk about, or I'll finish what I'm doing with it and I'll show it to you when I'm done. Okay, so that's the progress I've made on the knitting. And what I'm wearing this week, and it's the Mariposa sweater designed by Beatrice Rubio. She goes by Samba Knits on Ravelry, and this is the Mariposa sweater. And I don't know if you can see, it's got this little detail, like a wrapped stitch detail in a diamond pattern, and this ribbing at the top. And it was designed as a sweater, but I made it into a tee by just shortening the sleeves and using a cotton yarn. And I used Juniper Moon Farm Zoe or Zooey, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but it's 60% cotton, 40% linen, 284 yards in 3.52 ounces. It's, I guess I'd call it maybe a heavy fingering. I don't know, it's got a kind of thick and thin thing going on. And the color I picked is, I believe, white pepper, because I thought it would be a lovely neutral. It's kind of a grayish beige and white combo. And I thought it would be a really good neutral to add to my wardrobe. And I just feel like it's too neutral. And also, neutrals aren't really my thing. So I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I thought I needed something neutral, but as a result, it doesn't get much wear. So I'm thinking about maybe over dyeing it. And I have a couple of bottles of Rit dye in my online Amazon cart. Just thinking about, I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, thinking about dyeing it, maybe a pink or an aqua. We'll see, I don't know. I'm a little bit intimidated by that, just worrying about the mess mostly. But anyway, that's, and I do have one, and about a half skeins left of this. Oh, wait, no, there's a little bit more there. So I do have enough left over to do, I don't know, something with. I've got a bunch of little bits and pieces of leftover cotton and linen in here. Let's see. In here I've got, this is some hemp from when I did a big long vest thing a while back. I've got one lone skein of Collinette chrysalis, which is like a cotton wrapped in Polymode, whatever that is. That's probably the Brit way of saying something that we would, you know, polyester or nylon or something that, you know, very common. We just, you know, but it's an interesting texture. And I made a little kind of a bolero jacket out of this a while back, and I had one skein left over. I had bought it on the clearance rack at one of my old yarn stores that I used to go to, and I don't know, I'm hanging on to it for something. So anyway, so I've got some odds and ends. Maybe I'll acquire more odds and ends and do something weird with it one day, who knows. So, but yeah, I did go through, it turns out I had 2 boxes that were marked cotton and linen, and I went through both of them, consolidated them into one box, and I found these that I'm going to get rid of. It's some sugar and cream yarn from, who made it? Lily Sugar and Cream. I bought it years ago thinking I'd make a bunch of washcloths, and I made a few, but it fades really badly. Like, it faded a lot. So I didn't really keep up with that. I'm probably I'll put those in my donation box, because this is the kind of thing that people will pick up at a thrift store and they'll be like, oh, this will be great, I'll make some washcloths and dishcloths, and then they can enjoy it. Here's the leftovers from my Ozetta tea. It turns out I probably could have made it with just two skeins, but I think this might be a pretty, might make a pretty scarf or something. Now this is not cotton. It is a Dance Rustic Silk from Dragonfly. No. Why is it not? I can see every part of the tag except the name of the dyer. Okay. Dragonfly Fibers. And I picked this up at Rhinebeck a few years ago. I've got 3 skeins of this. It's called Red Bud. And it's a silk, but it's not a shiny silk. So I'm gonna make a cute top with that. Then I have 15 skeins of this Blue Sky Alpaca Organic Multi-Cotton. And I've got 15 skeins of it, so it's about 1,500 yards. And I'm gonna make a bulky cotton cardigan, kind of similar to a Baba sweater. If you're familiar with those, they're these sweaters made in Spain, and they're super expensive, and also they run quite small. A friend of mine bought one off of Poshmark, and they are supposedly a one-size-fits-all, but if you've ever actually seen one in person, they are not one-size-fits-all. They are one-size-fits-all skinny people. So, whatever. But I'm going to make a bulky cardigan, you know, not bulky, but this is about a worsted weight, I'd guess. I'm going to make a cotton cardigan out of this. So it would be, you know, with a V-neck and a little bit loose. And so this could be, in Houston, a cotton cardigan can be a 4-season sweater. So I'll do that. And that's, you know, and then the things I showed you last week. Turns out I have 5 skeins of this Araucania cotton blend in these beautiful greens. So I'm going to make a t-shirt with that. I'll make a t-shirt with this Fibra Natura cotton linen blend. More green, a little purple in there. I have this Pima cotton from Classic Elite Yarns, and I bought it for a project years ago, like when I was first got back into knitting, and we're talking, this is probably like 18 years ago. And I started making a top with it, and this yarn it kept stretching and stretching and stretching, and so I ripped it out, and I'm gonna have to find something else to do with this, but its day will come. It's too pretty not to use. And then it rolled away. I have 7 skeins of this Baracco Love It in this pretty aqua, almost like a robin's egg blue. And this is 58 cotton, 38 acrylic, 4% polyester. And it's got a really interesting texture to it that I don't know how to describe. It's almost like springy, like a boing boing spring, not the season spring. But yeah, it's very, very, very round. So yeah, I've got 7 skeins, so that's about a little over 800 yards, about 840 yards. So I'll figure out something to do with it. It's really pretty. I bought it because it was on clearance, and my local yarn store that used to be here, it's no longer there. They went out of business. It was called Yarns to You in Houston. If any of you are from Houston or visited Houston back when it was going strong, the yarn store, not Houston, you may have been there. But when they would have clearance sales, well, they always had a clearance section, but a couple of times a year they would have a big sale, and every single yarn in their clearance section, didn't matter what it was, it didn't matter what it was $3 a skein. And I picked up a ton of really nice yarn at those sales. That's where I got this collinette I showed you earlier, and that's probably where I got that Love It. I bought a sweater quantity of Malabrigo off of that clearance. Yeah, so you could not beat those prices. But then the owner had a baby, and she decided that she wanted to focus on that it was too much being a mom and owning and running a yarn store. And I get it, but it was one of the best yarn stores I've ever been to, bar none. And Houston just doesn't have anything anymore that can compete with it. It was just too good. Okay, so let's talk about summer knits and summer knitting. Summer knits are those things that you knit to wear during the warmer months, and warm weather knitting is things you knit while the weather is warm, and maybe it doesn't feel good to sit under a pile of wool or a blanket in progress. Unless you're my husband and the HVAC kicks on in the evening and you get cold and you grab a blanket 365 days a year, or 366 this year. But in Houston, where it's one of the most air-conditioned cities in the world, it's not that big a deal wearing or sitting, working on wool in the summer because AC keeps you cool. And maybe you are also in a very air-conditioned place. And knitting in the summer is like knitting anywhere else. But if you're not, then you might be drawn to knitting smaller things like hats and socks, or this, which I found in my stash diving adventures this week. It's a kit that I picked up at Rhinebeck many years ago. It's for making the Migra mitts, and it was designed by Laura Nelkin. And this kit is to make these beaded textured mitts in brown with these turquoise beads. And I think this has been bouncing around in my stash for years, and there's no reason not to make it. I can probably knock these out in a week. So I'm going to put these in my little knitting basket, and maybe I'll get to that soon. This is my basket. It's a shark. I got it at Aldi, and it's for a kid's room, but I don't care. I love sharks. So that's my, okay, I'll be honest. I went back and bought another one. So I have two of them. But I'm digressing. So yes, small projects, that's some summer or warm weather knitting that you may want to think about. So for me though, a lot of people, when the weather gets cold, you start thinking about knitting sweaters. And when the weather gets warm, you start thinking about knitting summery tops. Well, for my own knitting, I'm trying to shift that so that during the summer, thanks to air conditioning, I can knit sweaters that are then ready for me to wear when the weather starts to cool down for that week of winter we might get. Or I'm exaggerating. We do get cool weather starting in November usually. We get some cold days too. We get chilly nights, and go out in the evening, you want a sweater. So sweaters are not completely useless in Houston. I do wear my sweaters. But thanks to air conditioning, I can keep knitting those sweaters in the summer. And then in the winter and cooler months, I want to focus on knitting things I can wear in the summer, like the Ozetta tee or this Mariposa. Things that I just want to kind of get ahead of that curve, or that drive to knit the things that feel seasonally appropriate. Because if I start a sweater in October when it starts to cool off, it's not going to be ready to wear until probably March, depending on how complicated it is. Now, I did that neon nectar sweater, which I showed you back in episode 1. I knit that in a couple of weeks because I was super motivated, and it was DK yarn, and I didn't really have anything else I was working on at the time. So that's different. But yeah, so I am in the process of putting together a bundle of patterns for cute little t-shirts summery tops. That are summer knits. I'm going to put those in the down below, and also try to make a Ravelry bundle. I've never done that before. I'm going to try to make a Ravelry bundle and link to it. I'm getting very ambitious. Also, forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, so summer knits, summer knitting. When do you do your summer knitting? Or does it matter? When do you do your summer knits? When do you make your summer knits? When do you make your winter knits? Is warm weather knitting, does it even matter to you? Do you live where it's always chilly? Like say you live in Iceland or Alaska or northern Canada somewhere. Or do you live somewhere where it's always warm? Maybe you live in Mexico City or South America or Australia, and you get a lot of hot weather. You know, a lot of warm weather, and warm weather knits are more of a thing for you. I don't know. So, things to think about. Also, and I just saw my mug here, it's my Welcome to Night Vale Community Radio mug. It reminded me, I forgot to give you a creepy podcast recommendation last week. So what I have been listening to lately in the creepy podcast genre is an anthology horror podcast called Undertow. And right now they're running a series called Narcosis, which I don't recommend if you have thalassophobia, which is a fear of the sea. Most of it takes place underwater. It involves divers and involves strange creatures underwater. So in a kind of a Lovecraftian way. And I also listened to one other seasons called The Sisters, which that involves some body horror as well as some just creepy cult mumbo jumbo stuff. So I really enjoyed it. It's based very, very loosely on a story from the medical world. So, but it's fiction, it's complete fiction. So yeah, so those, I'm really enjoying that. It's called Undertow. And you can find that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. And let's see, that's it for my podcast recommendations. I talked a little bit about summer knitting and, you know, what fibers you want to knit with in different seasons and that kind of thing. This week, gonna keep working on my twists and turns. Maybe I'll go back to this poncho. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do another hat. I don't know. I just really don't know. I'm trying not to pin myself down too much. I might go through another box in my stash. It's pretty intimidating. Maybe you're intimidated by your stash too. Maybe we can be intimidated together. So yeah, I'd love to hear about your summer knitting plans, your thoughts on warm weather knitting, your thoughts on creepy podcasts. Hey, if you've got a creepy podcast to recommend, I would love to hear about it because I'm always looking for a new one. And yeah, again, if you enjoyed this or any of my content, I again would love it if you would like or subscribe. See, I'm starting to get into that. That's starting to feel more comfortable to say. Anyway, it has been great chatting with you again this week, and I look forward to coming back next week and sharing something, anything with you. Bye.